The first thing you hear is the hollow thunk of a golf ball striking hardwood at 2 in the morning. Not a driving range, not a tournament. A quiet suburban living room where the only light comes from a muted infomercial flickering across an empty couch. And in the center of it stands Happy Gilmore, older, scruffier, shoulders heavier than they used to be, staring down a golf ball like it just insulted his mother. His grip is tight, too tight. He whispers to himself, breath unsteady. Then he swings. The ball rockets through the dark and smashes a photo frame on the far wall. A younger, Happy, smiling beside Chubbs, cracks beneath the glass. Happy freezes. His jaw flexes. He mutters, "Not again," but the words tremble, like even he doesn't believe them. The silence that follows is sharp, the kind that presses on your chest. Happy steps toward the broken frame, crunching glass under his slippers. He crouches, lifting the cracked photo with both hands. The image is sun-bright, alive with memories he hasn't touched in years. But his fingers shake. There's something in his eyes, fear maybe, or something worse. He whispers, "Chubbs, I don't know what to do anymore." His voice breaks on the last word. Then the room shifts, a sudden metallic groan somewhere in the house. Happy looks up fast, breath caught. He's not alone. He can feel it. That creeping cold at the back of his neck. But he waits, listening. Only silence answers. He doesn't bother trying to sleep after that. Dawn finds him outside on the scruffy patch of lawn he still calls a yard. The sky is pale, washed with early light, and Happy stands barefoot on the cold grass, repeatedly swinging at golf balls that lie untouched at his feet. Each time he draws back, his muscles lock. His timing's off. His stance is wrong. His once legendary swing is dissolving in real time, his body flinching like it's braced for something he can't explain. He grunts in frustration, grabs the nearest ball, and hurls it across the street like a baseball pitcher having a breakdown. It bounces off a mailbox with a sad clunk. "Still got the arm," a voice calls. Happy turns. Standing on the sidewalk is Ben, his teenage nephew, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie half-zipped, trying way too hard to look casual. He's got Happy's old restless energy in the way he shifts from foot to foot, but there's something softer in him too, something hopeful. Ben smirks. "But I'm guessing that's not what golf wants from you." Happy exhales, long and tired. "Golf wants a lot of things. I can't give it anymore." He doesn't elaborate. Ben studies him, expression tightening with worry he's not old enough to hide. "You okay? You look like you haven't slept since, I don't know, the Bush administration." Happy tries to chuckle, but it comes out hollow. "I'm fine, kid. Just practicing." Ben glances at the untouched balls. "Yeah, looks like it's going great." Happy's jaw tenses. The sun catches the bruise-like shadows under his eyes. Something's eating at him, something big enough that even a joke can't loosen it. Ben opens his mouth to ask, but a loud car horn honks from the street. His ride to school. He gives Happy one last look, an unspoken "please talk to me" before jogging off. Happy watches him go, shoulders sagging, then turns back toward the house, toward the silence that's been swallowing him alive. He steps inside, and the air changes instantly, colder, heavier. There's a smell he can't place, faint but unsettling, like old leather left out in the rain. He rubs his arms. "Get a grip," he murmurs, though the nervous edge in his voice betrays him. He moves toward the kitchen, but stops halfway. Something's different. The broken photo from last night, the one he left on the coffee table, has been placed upright. Carefully. Neatly. As if someone took the time to arrange it. Happy stares at it, pulse hammering. He didn't touch it. No one else has keys. His throat tightens. And then, as he steps closer, he sees it. A fresh crack running across Chubbs's face that wasn't there before. Deep. Jagged. Like pressure was applied deliberately. For a moment, Happy can't breathe. His hands go cold. His gut twists hard enough to bend him slightly forward. He whispers, "No, no, 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 because this isn't just weird. This is impossible." But the house gives no explanation. Just the low hum of the fridge and the echo of his own racing heartbeat. He backs away, swallowing hard. He needs air. He needs clarity. He needs something he can't name. But before he reaches the door, his phone buzzes in his pocket, breaking the tension like a whip crack. It's a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. It's happening again. Happy's body goes still. Completely still. His eyes widen with a kind of fear you don't fake. Not the fear of the unknown, but of something familiar. Something he spent years trying to bury. His thumb hovers over the screen. The phone buzzes again. A photo this time. Blurry, dark, but unmistakable. The outline of a man standing at the edge of a driving range. Watching. Waiting. The same silhouette. Happy saw, years ago. Years ago. The same nightmare he thought he outran. His breath catches. Then the room creaks. Something moves upstairs. Something heavy. Happy doesn't run. He freezes, listening. Every muscle locking into place the way they used to before a tournament swing. The sound upstairs is slow, deliberate, like someone shifting weight on old floorboards. He feels that cold pulse again at the base of his spine, the one he's been pretending isn't real. His grip tightens around the phone until the plastic creaks. For a long moment, he just stands there, fighting the urge to call out. But something inside him whispers, "Don't. Not yet. Not until you know what's waiting." The house feels smaller as he climbs the stairs. Each step groans under his weight, announcing him even though he wishes it wouldn't. His breath grows shallow, his hands sweat. And halfway up, he catches his reflection in the hallway mirror, pale, shaken, eyes darting. "Get it together," he mutters, but the words fall apart as soon as they leave his mouth. The upstairs hallway stretches long and dim, the morning sun barely reaching through the drawn curtains. Happy stops at the first door. Ben's old room. Empty for years. He nudges it open with his foot. Nothing. Just dust catching in a thin beam of sunlight like wandering ghosts. He steps back out, but before he can move, something shifts again, this time from the far end of the hallway. Happy turns slowly. The door to his bedroom is slightly open. He never leaves it open, not once. His pulse spikes. The air thickens. That whisper in his head grows louder now, curling with dread. Not alone. Not alone. Not alone. Happy inches forward, breath trembling. He nudges the door with one hand. It swings wider, hinges whining, softly. For a moment, the room looks normal. Unmade bed, cluttered nightstand, the faint smell of coffee he spilled last week. But then his eyes catch something strange. On the bed lies a golf glove. Black. Clean. Placed dead center like a calling card. Happy's chest tightens. He knows that glove. Knew the man who wore it. A man who should be long gone. He picks it up with 2 fingers. The leather is cold. Too cold. A sharp exhale leaves his lungs. This can't be happening again. His voice cracks in the middle, the weight of old memories hitting him like a body blow. And then, behind him, the sound of another floorboard creaks. He spins, just in time to see a shadow slip back down the stairs. Happy bolts. His bare feet thud hard on the steps. He reaches the bottom in seconds, heart pounding, but the living room stands empty, still, untouched. No shadow, no movement, just silence. Again, that awful, heavy silence pressing in around him. Then his phone buzzes. Same unknown number. Last warning. He swallows hard. "Who are you?" he types with shaking fingers. The reply is instant. "You know." His throat goes dry. He wants to deny it. "You know." His throat goes dry. He wants to deny it. To push the thought away. But it claws back up, refusing to stay buried. He remembers a figure on a dark driving range. A voice that once whispered his name. A rivalry that went too far. A night he never told anyone about. Not even Ben. And now, whatever he tried to outrun, it's back. And then, like fate picking the worst possible moment, a car pulls into his driveway. Happy jolts, peering through the blinds. A man in a gray suit steps out, adjusting his tie like he owns the place. He walks toward the door with the calm confidence of someone carrying bad news. Happy opens the door before the man can knock. "If you're selling solar panels," Happy grumbles, "pick a different apocalypse." But the man isn't smiling. In fact, he looks almost sympathetic. Mr. Smiling. Gilmore? Happy nods warily. I'm Richard Hale, Commissioner of the Pro Senior Golf Association. Happy blinks. The what now? Hale clears his throat. We're launching a new televised tournament. Big sponsorship, huge audience. We want you in it. Happy laughs once, sharp and humorless. Buddy, the only thing I'm competing in these days is who can stay awake the longest at 3 a.m. Hale doesn't budge. You're still a legend. People love you. And frankly, we need you. Happy shakes his head. Look, I'm not that guy anymore. Hale studies him with careful eyes. Maybe not. But someone out there thinks otherwise. What? Happy asks, confused. Hale pulls out a plastic bag containing a black golf glove. The same model. The same brand. This was mailed to our office yesterday, Hale says. No note. No return address. Just this. Happy's stomach sinks. His grip loosens. Why would someone send you that? Hale hesitates. Because they also sent this. He offers Happy a folded piece of paper. Happy opens it slowly. Inside is a single sentence. He'll play, or he won't survive. Happy's breath stops. Not slows, stops completely. The words twist inside him like a blade. Hale misreads his silence. I know it's dramatic, but fans can be intense. Happy cuts him off. That's not a fan. Then who? Happy steps back, eyes darkening. Someone who should have stayed dead. Hale blinks at him, unsettled. Dead? Happy doesn't answer. He can't. Not yet. Because saying it out loud might make it real. He folds the paper again with trembling hands. But before he can speak, something crashes upstairs. Hale startles. What was that? Happy's voice drops to a whisper. Trouble. Happy grips the railing so hard his knuckles bleach white. The crash upstairs wasn't small. It sounded like something heavy hitting the floor, hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Hale steps back toward the door, eyes wide. Should we call someone? Happy doesn't answer. His jaw tightens, eyes fixed on the top of the staircase like he's staring down a memory he wishes he could burn. Another thump echoes through the house. Not random. Rhythmic. Like someone dragging something across the floor. Happy moves first. Slow, controlled, every step deliberate. Hale whispers, You're just walking toward it. Happy doesn't look back. Trust me. Running never helps. His voice carries a strange kind of resignation, like he's lived this moment before, long before Hale ever showed up at his door. He reaches the bottom stair, pausing as he listens again. The dragging stops. Silence thickens, settling heavily around them. Happy climbs. The house creaks softly under his weight, every sound amplified by tension. He thinks he's prepared. He always thinks he is. But by the time he reaches the landing, his heartbeat is thudding in his ears. Hale follows, despite clearly regretting every life choice that brought him to this moment. Happy gestures for him to stay back. Hale nods quickly, ducking halfway behind the wall. Happy steps toward his bedroom. The door isn't just open now. It's wide, hanging crooked like someone hid it from inside. He swallows hard. The glove he'd left on the bed is gone. The sheets are torn, slashed by something sharp. Deep grooves carve into the wood floor, long, uneven, frantic. Happy's stomach twists. Someone, or something, was here. But there's no one in sight. He kneels and traces one of the gouges with his fingers. The wood splinters under his touch. It feels recent, too recent. His mind flashes back to a night years ago, to a man with fists like bricks and a temper that made Happy's look like meditation. A rival who swore he'd break Happy's career, then snapped his own life in a downward spiral of obsession. Happy whispers, Shooter, what did you do? Hale hears the name and stiffens. Shooter? Shooter McGavin? He's gone. Isn't he? Happy doesn't answer. Not directly. He stands slowly, gaze locked on the broken door. People don't stay gone if they're still angry. Hale's face drains. Wait, hold on. Are you saying Shooter's alive? Happy shakes his head. I'm saying someone wants me to think he is, and they're doing a damn good job. Before Hale can respond, a faint sound rises from down the hall. A soft, hollow tapping, steady, almost impatient. Happy turns toward it. The last door in the hallway. The attic. He hasn't opened it in years, not since the night everything went wrong. His throat tightens. A cold bead of sweat trails down his spine. Hale whispers, "We don't have to go up there." Happy's reply is quiet but firm. "Yeah, I do." They reach the attic door together. Happy grips the handle, but it's colder than it should be. Ice cold. He hesitates. For a moment, he considers backing away. But then, that familiar spark lights behind his eyes. The same one he used to get right before he hit something he wasn't supposed to. He shoves the door open. Dust explodes into the air. The attic is dim, lit only by a single narrow window. Boxes line the walls. Stacks of old trophies glint faintly in the weak light. And in the center, something sits on a wooden stool. Happy's breath catches. Hale whispers, "Oh God," because on that stool lies a single object, a putter. But not just any putter. Chubbs's putter. The original. The one Happy lost years ago. The one that should have been impossible to recover. Happy steps forward, heart pounding. He lifts the putter slowly, reverently. It feels wrong in his hands, heavier, colder, like grief soaked into metal. He whispers, "How did you?" But he doesn't finish. Because carved into the wooden handle, fresh and deep, is a message, one last match. Happy's throat closes. Hale's voice wavers. This is insane. Someone broke into your house, trashed your room, left a dead man's glove, and delivered you the one club nobody's seen in decades? This is obsession, not fandom. Happy turns the putter over in his hands. His voice is low. "No, this is personal." He lowers the putter. That's when he notices it, a trail of footprints in the dust across the floor. Heavy. Recent. Leading to the far wall and stopping at the window. Happy rushes over, peering outside. Nothing. Just empty street, empty yard, quiet neighborhood pretending not to notice something wrong. But then he sees it. On the lawn, pressed into the grass, is a single black golf tee. Brand new. Planted straight up. Waiting. Hale exhales shakily. What does that mean? Happy stares at the tee, jaw tightening. It means he wants me to follow. Hale puts a hand on his shoulder. Happy, if someone is threatening you, you need to call the police. Happy shakes him off. What am I supposed to tell them? A ghost from a golf course is stalking me. Hale doesn't argue because he knows Happy's right. None of this makes sense. None of it fits into a normal explanation. But Happy feels it, the old world trying to pull him back. The rivalry. The fury. The unfinished score. And somewhere deep in that mix, something darker he hasn't named aloud. He grips Chubbs's putter. Fine, he murmurs. If he wants a match, his eyes harden. He'll get one. But even as he says it, Happy knows something terrifying. This isn't a challenge. It's a warning. Happy stands at the attic window long after Hale leaves, clutching Chubbs's putter like it's the only thing keeping him upright. Outside, the lone black tee remains planted in the lawn, unmoving in the windless morning. He stares at it with a heaviness he hasn't felt since the night everything fell apart, since the night Shooter disappeared. His memories claw at him, pulling him back to a place he's tried for years to bury. The cold smell of wet turf. Stadium lights flickering. Shooter pacing the edge of the range, muttering threats too low for anyone else to hear. The last argument. Ugly, sharp, desperate. The shattering of control. A body collapsing. A splash in the reservoir. And Happy's heartbeat thundering in the silence that followed. He shakes his head hard, almost violently, forcing the memory back down. Not now. Not today. He can't afford to fall apart. He leaves the putter on the table and heads outside. The air is crisp, biting. He crouches on the grass, studying the tee. It's perfectly aligned, driven into the ground like a marker. A message. A place to stand. A place to wait. He picks it up between two fingers. The plastic bends slightly. New. Clean. Recently touched. Left for him specifically. Happy looks around his quiet street. Nothing moves. No cars. No neighbors. No shadows lurking in the hedges. Too quiet. He pockets the tee and moves back toward the house. But halfway up the steps, a voice cuts through the air. Uncle Happy? He turns fast. Ben stands at the edge of the driveway, frozen mid-step. His backpack half unzipped, hair still messy from school. But there's something different in his face. Fear. Not the kind you get from failing a test. The real kind. The kind that kicks your survival instinct awake. Happy's voice softens. Hey, thought you were at school. Ben shakes his head. They called Mom. Said someone was hanging around the parking lot asking about me. Happy's stomach drops. What do you mean someone? Ben swallows. Tall guy. Big shoulders. Wearing a black glove. Happy's heart stops for a beat. He steps forward quickly, hands on Ben's shoulders. Did he talk to you? Did he touch you? Ben shakes his head again, faster this time. No, but he knew your name. Happy's pulse spikes. Rage and fear surge together, bitter and electric. Someone crossed a line. A big one. He lets out a slow breath, trying to steady himself. Ben looks up at him. Uncle Happy, what's going on? Happy tries to form an answer, but nothing comes. What is he supposed to say? Remember Shooter McGavin, the guy who tried to kill me? He might be alive. Or maybe someone pretending to be him wants to ruin my life. Also, he's stalking you now. Want pizza? He can't put that on a 15-year-old kid. Instead, Happy puts a hand on the back of Ben's neck and steers him toward the house. Inside. Now. Ben hesitates. But no arguing. His voice comes out sharper than he intends. Ben nods and goes. Happy locks the door behind them, checking it twice. His hands tremble. Ben stands in the living room, eyes darting around the torn sheets, the cracked frame, the skewed furniture. What happened in here? Happy forces calm into his voice. We're fine, just rough morning. Ben's eyebrows knit. This doesn't look like a rough morning. This looks like a break-in. Happy doesn't answer. The silence is its own confession. Ben sits, hugging his backpack to his chest. Are we in danger? Happy kneels in front of him, trying to steady his breathing. He wants to say no. He wants to reassure him. But the truth squeezes his ribs until it hurts. Not if I handle it, he whispers. Ben's eyes search his. Handle what? Happy looks away. He can't lie. He also can't tell the truth. So he stands, grabbing Chubbs's putter from the table. His decision hits him all at once, clean and terrifying. He knows what the glove means, what the T means, what the T means, what the message carved into the handle means. There's no hiding from this anymore. No pretending it was all in his head. Someone wants him back on the course. Someone dangerous. Someone who knows his past well enough to weaponize it. If he doesn't play, the threats will escalate. Maybe toward him. Maybe toward Ben. The thought alone makes his blood run hot. Ben watches him with wide, uncertain eyes. Where are you going? Happy turns the putter in his hands, jaw tight, to find answers. Ben stands quickly. I'm coming with. No. The word snaps out like a whip. Ben flinches. Happy softens his tone. I just need you safe. Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. Ben swallows, voice shaking. Uncle Happy, I don't want something to happen to you. Happy pauses. Breath catches. For a moment, the weight of everything presses against him. Age, guilt, the ghost of rivalry, the fear of losing someone he loves. He puts a hand on Ben's shoulder and squeezes. Nothing's happening to me. He wishes he believed that. He steps outside, gripping the putter like a lifeline. The driveway feels colder now, the world eerily still. The tee, the glove, the message, they all point to one place. The old driving range. Where everything started, where everything ended, where someone is waiting. Happy steels himself. Happy walks with the kind of determination that looks nothing like confidence. His shoulders hunch slightly forward, not from age, but from pressure. Pressure he thought he'd left behind decades ago. The putter rests in his grip like a piece of history he can't shake. The morning sun hangs low, washing the world in a pale light that makes everything feel too quiet, too expectant, like the whole town is holding its breath. He passes the fence that used to rattle whenever kids shot bottle rockets at his porch, passes the corner store where the owner still jokes about the Gilmore swing discount, passes the cracked tennis courts where he once taught Ben how to hold a club. Each place pulls at him with memories, some bright, some dark, all heavy. He keeps moving anyway. He has to. If he slows down, the fear will catch him. By the time he reaches the gravel road leading to the range, the air smells like cut grass and old dust. Familiar. Comforting once. Not today. The range sits behind a sagging chain-link fence, the entrance sign faded to ghostly blue. Happy's balls. Outdrive your problems. Someone had painted a crude smiley face over the logo years back. Now the smile looks warped, lopsided, a little too fitting. The gate hangs open. Happy stops. That's wrong. He always locks it. Always. Even though the place barely gets customers anymore. He steps through, every instinct prickling. The gravel crunches under his shoes as he walks toward the main lot. The hitting bays stand empty, shadows stretched long beneath the roof. The ball dispenser sits silent, a lone plastic bucket toppled beside it. Then he sees them. Footprints. Fresh ones, pressed deep into the dirt. Large, heavy. Leading toward the far end of the range, the old tournament practice area nobody uses. Happy's breath shivers in his chest. He follows the prints slowly, gripping the putter tighter. Each step feels like stepping deeper into something he already regrets. The wind picks up, brushing cold across his neck. The sky dims behind a stretch of gray clouds, turning the whole world into a muted stage with too much space for danger to hide. When he reaches the far end of the range, he stops dead. Someone has set up a single tee. Black plastic. Identical to the one he found on his lawn. But this time, a ball rests on top, perfectly aligned, waiting. And behind it, stuck into the ground like a grave marker, stands a small wooden stake with a note pinned to it. Happy crouches. His hands shake as he unpins the paper. 2 words. Swing first. His stomach knots. His breathing turns shallow. The world blurs for a moment, and memories hit him in quick, sharp flashes. Shooter yelling across the range. A dark silhouette beside the reservoir. The sound of water swallowing something large. And that awful, choking silence after. Happy stands. If this is a joke, he mutters to the empty field. It's gone way too far. But the wind doesn't answer. The field doesn't move. The ball sits there, still and patient, daring him to take the shot. He shifts his stance. Old habits slide back into place. Knees bent, shoulders loose, eyes locked on the target. The putter feels wrong for a drive, but he doesn't change clubs. He can't. Not when this one was sent to him. Not when this is the game someone wants him to play. He draws back. His breath catches. His hands tremble. His swing collapses halfway. The putter clinks weakly against the ball, sending it wobbling only a few feet before it dies in the grass. Happy curses under his breath, the failure hitting him too hard. He steps back, grinding the toe of his shoe into the dirt. His hands shake uncontrollably. His body won't cooperate. It's like something inside him is jamming the gears. Panic. Trauma. Or maybe the creeping belief that the past never died at all. He squeezes his eyes shut. Then, a sound. Soft. A single, slow clap coming from behind him. Happy's eyes snap open. He whirls around, heart hammering. No one's there. The wind stills. The field stretches empty. Silent. He stands frozen, breath held. The hairs on his arms rise one by one. He waits. Listening. Nothing. 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 Then, a second clap. Closer. Happy spins again, pulse racing. His voice cracks as he shouts, "Show yourself." Nothing answers. His throat tightens painfully. That clap, that rhythm, it's the same one Shooter used to do when mocking his warm-up swings. The same slow, taunting beat. But Shooter's gone. Shooter's gone. Shooter's gone. Shooter's. Happy's phone buzzes violently in his pocket. He snatches it out. Another unknown number. Another message. You missed. His hands tremble harder. "Where are you?" he types. The reply comes immediately. "Turn around." Happy freezes. For a moment he can't breathe. His feet feel glued to the earth. His chest burns. He fears the truth more than he fears whatever is behind him. But slowly, mechanically, he turns. A figure stands at the far edge of the range, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black glove. Happy's heart slams so hard he nearly buckles. But then, lightning flashes through a break in the clouds, illuminating the figure just long enough for Happy to see the detail that makes his blood run cold. It's not Shooter. It's someone younger, someone he recognizes, someone who cannot be here. Ben, standing completely still. Expression empty. Gloved hand twitching. Happy stumbles forward. Ben? Ben. But Ben doesn't move, doesn't speak, doesn't blink. He just lifts one arm and points toward the woods behind the range. Happy doesn't remember deciding to move. His body just reacts. Muscles firing, adrenaline spiking, breath tearing out of his lungs as he sprints toward Ben. The gravel slips beneath his shoes. The sky grumbles overhead, and Ben stands there, frozen in that impossible posture, one arm raised, pointing toward the trees like something inside him isn't fully his. Ben, talk to me. Happy shouts, voice cracking with panic. He hasn't felt since the day he lost his temper in front of a crowd and realized how dangerous he could be. But Ben doesn't blink, doesn't turn, doesn't acknowledge him at all. His eyes stare straight ahead, glassy, like he's seeing something far beyond the range. Happy reaches him and grabs his shoulders hard. Ben! Hey! Snap out of. Ben's body jerks violently, a sharp inhale cutting through his clenched teeth. His knees buckle. Happy catches him before he hits the ground. Easy, easy, kid. Ben trembles, clutching Happy's shirt, chest rising too fast. His voice comes out thin, broken. Uncle, I couldn't move. Happy's heart stops. What do you mean you couldn't move? Ben shakes his head, tears forming. I was awake. I saw everything. I tried to talk, but something held me. His voice cracks, something cold. Happy pulls him close, shielding him from the wind whipping across the field. His mind spins. Someone staged this, or someone controlled him. Both possibilities feel impossible until now. The black glove on Ben's right hand draws Happy's eye. He grabs it, tugging it off. Underneath, Ben's skin is pale and clammy, as if the glove drained heat from him. Happy swallows hard. Who gave you this? Ben shakes his head, horrified. No one. I don't remember. I was at home, on the couch. And then. He squeezes his eyes shut. Darkness. Just darkness. Happy's jaw clenches. Whoever he's dealing with isn't just leaving notes. They're getting inside his home, inside his family, inside his nephew's mind. He gets Ben to his feet. We're leaving. Ben nods shakily, still catching his breath. Together they take a few steps toward the exit when a sound erupts from the tree line. A single golf ball, struck with tremendous force, whizzes past them and slams into a wooden post behind them with a sharp shack. Both freeze. Happy turns slowly toward the woods. Another sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Steady. Someone walking deliberately toward the edge of the clearing. Ben clutches Happy's arm, whispering, "Don't." But Happy steps forward anyway. Rage begins to simmer beneath his ribs. Hot, violent, the same fire that once made him a monster on the green. But something else is there too. Fear. Not for himself. For the kid behind him. A figure emerges between the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, face hidden beneath a hood. Happy lifts. Chubbs' putter defensively. You're gonna step out where I can see you, he growls. Right now. The figure stops at the boundary between shadow and light. And then, slowly, he lifts his head. Happy's breath catches. It's not Shooter. It's someone worse. A man with Shooter's jawline. Shooter's stance. Shooter's smirk, but younger. Much younger. Too young. Early 20s maybe. The resemblance is uncanny enough to make Happy's skin crawl. Ben whispers. Who is that? The young man steps fully into the open. His eyes glint with a cruel, familiar confidence. My name, he says, voice smooth and poisonous, is Trey McGavin. Happy's chest locks. McGavin. Shooter's son. The son Shooter disowned publicly. The son no one ever saw again. But I didn't. Happy's pulse pounds hot in his ears. What did you do to Ben? Trey shrugs. Relax. Just a little demonstration. His smile sharpens. Needed you to understand the stakes. Happy's grip tightens around the putter. You broke into my house. You left threats. You stalked my nephew. Whatever you think this is, it ends now. Trey's eyes widen theatrically. Ends? No, Happy. This is the beginning. He gestures toward the field behind them. Tomorrow morning, the senior pro tournament goes live. Cameras everywhere. Sponsors watching. His voice turns venomous. You're going to enter, and you're going to lose. Publicly, miserably, historically. Happy steps forward. And if I don't? Trey's smile fades into something colder. You won't like what happens to the kid. Ben stiffens behind Happy. Happy's chest floods with heat, fear, fury, guilt, all braided together so tightly he can't separate them. He lifts the putter, teeth clenched. You lay a hand on him. Trey interrupts by tossing something at their feet. A black glove. Shooter's glove. The original. Happy stares at it. Trey smirks. I inherited more than his swing. The woods behind him swallow his silhouette as he steps backward into shadow. Before he disappears entirely, he whispers, "See you on the green." Then he's gone, leaving Happy shaking with devastation. And knowing one terrifying truth, he has no choice. He has to play. The tournament grounds hum with thousands of voices, the air thick with heat, tension, and the faint smell of sunscreen and concession stand pretzels. Cameras sweep across the crowd, towering cranes gliding like metal vultures looking for drama. Happy stands alone near the far edge of the green, tugging at the collar of a polo shirt he hasn't worn in years. The weight of Chubbs's putter in his hand feels heavier than any club should. But the real weight, the crushing one, sits in his chest. Ben, safe at home, but shaken, terrified, and being used as leverage by the son of the man Happy once destroyed, intentionally or not. Trey McGavin stands across the green, doing warm-ups with the same cruel precision Shooter had. The same arrogance. The same hunger for blood disguised as sportsmanship. Cameras flock around him. He soaks it in like fuel. Reporters whisper his name like he's already won. Happy watches him stretch, jaw tightening. Trey glances up and catches Happy's eye. He winks. The same slow, taunting wink. Shooter used the day he tried to take Happy's title. Happy's stomach twists. The crowd erupts as the commissioner introduces the players. Hale gives Happy a tight, worry-lined nod. Happy doesn't nod back. He can feel his pulse thudding through his skull. His palms sweat. His knees tremble. Every instinct inside him screams to run. He's older now. Slower. Haunted. And today isn't a normal match. Today is war. The first few holes are a blur. The first few holes are a blur. Trey dominates, effortlessly crushing drives, sinking putts with an easy, vicious grin. Every time Happy steps up to take a swing, his hands shake. His memories choke him. The night Shooter vanished. The guilt. The unending fear that maybe, just maybe, he had pushed a rival too far. His performance sinks. His score plummets. The crowd grows restless. The commentators mutter about age and decline. Trey loves every second. At hole 12, Happy misses a 2-foot putt. The ball lips the cup and rolls away like it's mocking him. Laughter ripples through the audience. Trey leans in close as he walks past and whispers, "You're pathetic. No wonder he hated you." Happy's breath catches. Something splinters inside him. Trey keeps going. "My father died thinking about you. Obsessed with you. You broke him. And now, I'm gonna break you." Happy straightens slowly. His hands stop trembling. His breath steadies. He looks Trey dead in the eyes, and for the first time today, something hardens in him. Not rage, not guilt. Something older, something truer. Resolve. He walks to the bench and sets Chubbs' putter across his knees. He runs his hand along the carved message. One last match. His mind quiets. For the first time since this nightmare began, he hears another voice. Warm, steady, reassuring. Go to your happy place. The world softens around the edges. He sees Chubbs, smiling, calm, proud. He sees the goofy alligator waving pom-poms. He sees the sunlit hills he used to imagine before every big swing. And beneath it all, he feels something he'd forgotten. He still loves this game. He still belongs here. Happy stands. Ben's voice echoes in his head. I don't want something to happen to you, he whispers. Nothing's happening to me. Not today. When he approaches hole 13, the crowd shifts. They feel it. Something's changed. Happy squares his shoulders, plants his feet, breathes once deep, and swings. Not the weak, trembling strike from earlier. The swing. The one that made him a legend. The ball screams down the fairway, curving beautifully before landing just feet from the pin. The crowd erupts. Trey's grin falters. For the first time, uncertainty cracks through. Happy marches through the next holes like a man reborn. Each shot sharp, each putt clean, each breath steady. He claws back the deficit stroke by stroke, dragging Trey's confidence down with every swing. By hole 18, they're tied. The final shot belongs to Trey. Pressure warps his face. Sweat beads along his hairline. He swings and shanks it wide. The gasp from the crowd cuts the air. Trey curses, fists clenched, eyes wild. Happy steps up to his ball. One clean putt wins the match. But he's not thinking about trophies, or revenge, or Shooter. He's thinking of Ben. He lowers the putter, taps the ball, it rolls, pauses, drops, silence. Then, the explosion of cheers. Happy stands still, breathing hard, chest swelling with relief, so powerful it nearly knocks him over. Trey collapses to his knees, staring at the ground like it betrayed him. Security closes in. Hale rushes to Happy, face shining with disbelief. But Happy isn't looking at the crowd. He's looking past them, at Trey. The young man's face twists into something broken, something lost, something barely holding itself together. Happy steps closer. It's over, he says softly. Trey whispers, trembling. You took everything from him. I couldn't let you win again. Happy kneels beside him. I didn't take anything from your father, he says gently. He lost himself. And you don't have to follow him. For a moment, just a moment, Trey's expression cracks. A boy peeks through the monster. Security takes him away. Happy exhales. The clouds break. Sunlight spills across the green. He closes his eyes, whispering to the sky. We did it, Chubbs. Adam Sandler built his entire comedic identity on characters who shouldn't belong in the worlds they invade, and Happy Gilmore was the purest distillation of that energy. 3 decades later, the idea of Sandler returning to that character creates a strange mix of nostalgia, curiosity, and apprehension. And that tension between past and present, youth and age, chaos and control, sits at the heart of why Happy Gilmore 2 exists at all. Before a frame was ever filmed, the sequel lived first as a question. What does it mean to revisit an icon who grew out of a very specific time in comedy? That's the axis on which the creative genesis turns. The original film's director, Dennis Dugan, helped shape the comedic rhythm that defined Sandler's early era: broad slapstick, occasionally juvenile, unexpectedly sincere. Dugan spent decades crafting studio comedies that embraced big emotions over subtlety, and his collaborations with Sandler, Big Daddy, Grown Ups, You Don't Mess with the Zohan, share a consistent creative philosophy: allow the ridiculous to coexist with genuine sweetness. While the studio has not officially announced whether Dugan returned for the sequel, the project itself is unmistakably built on the tonal blueprint he helped establish. Any director stepping in inherits not just a character, but a comedic ecosystem with its own rules, and the new film's trajectory can't escape that gravitational pull. What gives the sequel creative purpose is Adam Sandler's evolution as a filmmaker. The man who once weaponized goofball charm is now an actor capable of bruising dramatic depth, something audiences saw in uncut gems and hustle. That shift matters. It means Sandler isn't returning to Happy Gilmore to simply replay old beats. He's bringing decades of artistic growth with him. And here's the thing. When a performer revisits a role after decades, the project becomes a conversation between eras. Happy's defiance, his volcanic outbursts, his strange gentleness. They're no longer just comedic devices. They're artifacts of a younger man's worldview. Sandler returning at this stage suggests the sequel is interested in that contrast, in what happens when a man defined by rage and heart tries to find relevance in a world that's moved on. The creative spark for Happy Gilmore 2 reportedly ignited, not in a studio boardroom, but in a private moment. Sandler shared publicly he had written a draft and shown it to Christopher McDonald, who played the legendary villain Shooter McGavin. The revelation spread quickly because it carried weight. Sandler doesn't casually acknowledge script drafts, and showing it to McDonald, that is the gesture that tells you the sequel wasn't conceived as a corporate cash-in, but as a personal return to something meaningful. In comedy, nostalgia can be lazy. But shared nostalgia among collaborators, that's fuel. That's intention. When sequels arrive decades later, studios usually want a familiar package that's easy to market, recognizable character, same tone, new jokes. But the best legacy sequels, think Top Gun, Maverick, or Creed, succeed because they don't try to mimic their predecessors. They interpret them. They interrogate them. They let time reshape the story. Sandler is savvy enough to understand that Happy Gilmore 2 couldn't survive as a museum exhibit. Golf has changed. Sports culture has changed. Comedy has changed. The director, the writers, Sandler himself, they all have to navigate a world where viral meltdowns are live-streamed, where players become brands, where authenticity is a currency. A character like Happy, built on raw impulsiveness, becomes both a relic and a disruptor in that environment. And that tension gives the creative vision a dramatic spine the original never needed. The film also inherits an emotional absence. Carl Weathers, whose portrayal of Chubbs Peterson remains one of the most beloved parts of the original, passed away in 2024. Any director approaching this sequel faces the responsibility of honoring that legacy without exploiting it. The absence of Chubbs isn't just a casting gap, it's a tonal shift. His mentorship grounded Happy's chaos. He was the emotional anchor beneath the comedy. A thoughtful director would treat that absence as narrative gravity, using it to explore how characters move forward when foundational relationships have disappeared. If the film leans into that, it opens the door to themes of legacy, aging, and unfinished mentorship. Territory Sandler handles far better now than when he was 30. Production companies backing the film. Netflix has been the home of Sandler's output for years, though theatrical release speculation persists, play a significant role in shaping the creative mandate. Sandler's Netflix era is defined by creative freedom rather than studio micromanagement. That freedom is what allowed movies like Hustle to surprise critics and audiences alike. If Happy Gilmore 2 follows that model, the director likely enjoyed a looser structure, more improvisational space, and the ability to shape tone without chasing the broadest possible demographic. And that matters because Happy Gilmore is a character who thrives on spontaneity. Too much polish kills the humor. Too much nostalgia suffocates it. A director working under Sandler's Netflix-style umbrella has room to let the movie breathe. Room for Happy to be unpredictable again. What emerges from all these ingredients? Sandler's artistic growth, the weight of legacy, the absence of Chubbs, the shift in comedic landscape, the possibility of a more mature directorial approach, is a project that doesn't exist simply to cash in on a classic. It exists because the people involved felt something unfinished, something worth revisiting. The director's job, whoever ultimately sits in that chair, becomes balancing reverence with reinvention, not worshiping the original, but conversing with it, not repeating jokes, but honoring why those jokes worked. Sequels born decades after their predecessors face a unique kind of pressure. The script has to reckon with time, real time, narrative time, emotional time. And Happy Gilmore 2 begins on the page, in that uneasy space between honoring a cult classic and refusing to let nostalgia do all the heavy lifting. Adam Sandler, confirming he'd written a draft, wasn't just a fun anecdote, it was the clearest sign of creative authorship. When the central performer writes his own continuation after almost 30 years, you're not looking at a studio-mandated revival. You're watching a character's creator return to unfinished business, trying to figure out who Happy becomes when anger, humor, strength, and vulnerability age with him. A comedy script like this lives or dies by tone, and this sequel has to juggle two tones simultaneously: the loud, chaotic, deeply silly voice of the original and the more character-centered storytelling that defines Sandler's modern era. That dual identity is baked into the writing process. The first film was written by Sandler and Tim Herlihy, a duo who shaped the DNA of 90s Sandler comedy. Herlihy still collaborates with Sandler today, so whether officially credited or not, his influence hangs over the sequel's blueprint. The rhythm of their humor outbursts, absurd escalation, a punchline followed by a punch, can't just be replicated. It has to be contextualized for a 2025 audience who grew up on TikTok pacing and meta-aware humor. The writing challenge isn't repeating what worked, it's translating it. What gives the screenplay structural intrigue is the question the writers must answer. What world does Happy Gilmore walk into now? Golf is no longer the quiet, gentlemanly sport it was in the 90s. It's corporate, polarized, hyper-public, fully entangled with social media, sponsorships, and 24-hour scrutiny. The script has the perfect thematic playground here. Happy's explosive temper and everyman relatability once made him an oddball outsider in golf's pristine culture. Now, he'd trend on every platform before he finished a backswing. And that gives the story a built-in dramatic engine. A man who thrived by being unpredictable, now forced to face a world where every misstep becomes a headline. If the writing leans into this, instead of running from it, the film's humor and emotional depth both sharpen. The absence of Chubbs Peterson, due to Carl Weathers' passing, becomes a fundamental narrative pillar. A lesser script would simply name-drop him. A stronger one treats his absence as part of Happy's emotional landscape. Chubbs wasn't just comic relief. He was Happy's conscience, grounding his chaos in real care. Without him, Happy is untethered. And writing an untethered Happy at his age, past his athletic prime, past his youthful impulsiveness, introduces the story's possible emotional core. How does a man built on mentorship move forward when the person who shaped him is gone? It's not about grief as melodrama. It's about legacy, and how a character who once fought to prove he belonged must now confront what he leaves behind. Good screenwriting turns emotional absence into narrative fuel. But a screenplay can't survive on character alone. Comedy sequels need structure. The first film was a classic sports underdog arc with just enough emotional grounding to let the absurdity thrive. For the new film, the challenge is greater. Audiences already know Happy can win. They already know he can overcome the system. So the writers must shift the stakes. Maybe the story leans into generational shift. Happy mentoring a younger player, forced to confront who he used to be in someone else. Maybe it digs into rivalry again, reimagining how Shooter McGavin, if involved, navigates legacy, aging, and the sting of being permanently overshadowed. Shooter returning doesn't just provide comedic antagonism. It threads the story with a confrontation between past and present, ego and memory. Their dynamic gives the writers a thematic anchor, two men forever defined by a moment trying to redefine themselves decades later. Dialogue becomes another crucial challenge. The original film's quotability. "The price is wrong. You eat pieces of" was lightning in a bottle, partially because it didn't try to be iconic. The lines were funny because they were sincere. A sequel that tries to force memeable dialogue will feel desperate. Strong writing avoids that trap by grounding humor in character rather than punchlines. Happy's voice now has to reflect experience without losing volatility. Shooter's voice has to reflect age without losing arrogance. And the world around them must speak in the language of modern sports culture. PR scripts, influencer chatter, media narratives, creating comedic friction as Happy crashes through those polished veneers. In terms of structure, the screenplay likely follows a hybrid model, the sports comeback arc intertwined with a character evolution arc. The first film followed a straightforward three-act build, but legacy sequels often benefit from more reflective pacing. Moments where the script slows enough to acknowledge history without drowning in it. If the writers follow that approach, the strongest scenes will likely be ones where humor bleeds into vulnerability. Happy confronting a changed sport, facing personal loss, grappling with relevance, and still choosing to fight. Not because he needs to win, but because fighting is who he is. What ultimately defines the screenplay's success is intention. The draft Sandler teased didn't emerge from nostalgia. It emerged from curiosity. A performer wondering what happens when a furious underdog grows older. A story wondering how sports heroes evolve. A comedy asking how silliness survives maturity. When those questions guide the writing, the sequel stops being a retread and becomes a continuation. One that respects the past without being imprisoned by it. Before cameras roll, before sets go up, before a single golf club is swung, the soul of any sequel lives in its casting choices. And with Happy Gilmore 2, the casting process isn't just logistical, it's emotional archaeology. The filmmakers aren't simply choosing actors. They're choosing which parts of the original film's DNA deserve to be reborn, reinterpreted, or gracefully retired. For a story returning after nearly 3 decades, casting becomes the clearest statement of intention. Adam Sandler stepping back into Happy's shoes is the least surprising but most essential piece of the puzzle. Happy Gilmore isn't a role someone else can inherit. It's fused with Sandler's comedic instincts, timing, rage-fueled physicality, and surprising tenderness. The sequel's entire existence hinges on the idea that Happy has aged along with Sandler, which makes the casting choice both obvious and meaningful. Sandler's growth as a dramatic actor deepens the possibilities here. His recent performances show restraint, nuance, even fragility qualities the original Happy never had room to express. And that potential for emotional evolution is part of why bringing Sandler back isn't just nostalgia, it's narrative necessity. Then there's Christopher McDonald. His enthusiasm the moment Sandler revealed the script draft wasn't just a cute viral moment, it was a seismic signal. Shooter McGavin isn't just a villain. He's one of the great comedic antagonists of 90s cinema. Smug, polished, perpetually offended by Happy's existence. The character belongs to McDonald, the way Happy belongs to Sandler. And if he returns, and all signs point to yes, his casting becomes the centerpiece of the sequel's thematic structure. Shooter in his prime was a man obsessed with legacy. Shooter decades later? That's dramatic gold. His presence raises the stakes not through conflict alone, but through contrast. Watching two men who once defined each other's careers meet again later in life gives the sequel a heartbeat the original never needed. But the absence of Carl Weathers, whose portrayal of Chubbs still radiates warmth, creates a casting challenge that no director can finesse away. You cannot replace Chubbs. Trying would cheapen everything he represented. So the casting team must build around that absence rather than fill it. The smartest solution is introducing a new mentor, friend, or foil whose presence acknowledges Chubbs' influence without echoing it. And here's where casting becomes delicate. The new character needs enough personality to stand on their own, but enough emotional resonance to carry the shadow of what's missing. The filmmakers will almost certainly look for an actor with gravitas, someone who can balance humor with depth, especially if the story leans into Happy's reckoning with loss. That casting choice becomes a bridge between eras. Comedy sequels also thrive on fresh energy, so new characters are inevitable. The modern sports world is ripe with personalities. Influencers disguised as athletes, analytics-obsessed coaches, PR teams trying to muzzle volatile stars. Casting actors who naturally embody these archetypes becomes a goldmine for humor. Imagine a young golfer who's all image and zero grit, someone whose entire persona is curated online. That character becomes the perfect foil for Happy's messy authenticity. Casting directors will aim for charismatic rising stars, actors who can go toe-to-toe with Sandler in comedic rhythm without being swallowed by his improvisational style. There's also the question of Happy's family. The first film anchored him through his grandmother, a quiet emotional compass. If the sequel introduces a new family member, whether a niece, nephew, or even a child, that role becomes crucial. It gives Happy an emotional stake beyond competition. Casting here must capture innocence without slipping into saccharine sentimentality. A young performer with natural comedic instincts rather than forced cute energy prevents the film from drifting into cliché. Legacy sequels often feature stunt cameos, faces from the past popping up for applause. But with Happy Gilmore 2, restraint matters. The casting team has to be careful. Too many returning characters can drown the story in nostalgia soup. But a few precise choices can electrify the audience. Ben Stiller's cameo as the sadistic nursing home orderly remains legendary. Bringing him back, aged, perhaps now pretending to run a legitimate facility, could create one of the film's biggest comedic payoffs. Whether he returns depends on scheduling, tone, and whether the filmmakers feel his presence elevates rather than distracts. But if they do use him, it must be intentional. An emotional and comedic callback that slots naturally into the story's rhythm. The supporting cast will also likely feature actors from Sandler's regular troupe, people like Rob Schneider, Steve Buscemi, or Kevin James. Their presence is less about cameo bait and more about creative shorthand. These actors understand Sandler's improvisational style, know how to push him, and bring a familial looseness to the set. Their casting becomes a stabilizing force. They help the new cast acclimate to Sandler's comedic environment while grounding the sequel in the collaborative spirit that defined Sandler's career. But casting isn't just about names. It's about chemistry. Chemistry between Happy and his rival. Chemistry between Happy and whoever stands in as emotional anchor. Chemistry between old guard and new blood. Comedy collapses without it. So chemistry tests, whether formal or informal, likely played a defining role in shaping the ensemble. The team would seek actors who can withstand Sandler's unpredictability, McDonald's theatrical swagger, and the tonal oscillation between absurdity and sincerity. What makes the sequel's casting especially intriguing is that every choice operates on dual levels, comedic function and legacy function. Actors aren't just performing roles, they're stepping into a story audiences have carried for 30 years. The wrong casting feels like a betrayal. The right casting feels like a homecoming. Adam Sandler returning as Happy Gilmore isn't just a nostalgic gesture, it's a collision between two versions of the same artist. And you feel that the moment he steps back into frame. The original Happy was pure combustion, fury wrapped around heart, a walking contradiction who punched his way into a sport defined by etiquette. But Happy Gilmore 2 asks something richer from Sandler. It asks him to let age, loss, experience, and self-awareness reshape a character audiences thought they already understood. The performance becomes an excavation, one that occasionally shakes with the same volcanic energy as before, but now carries the weight of someone who's lived long enough to know that anger has consequences. Watch the way Sandler calibrates Happy's temper now. In the 90s, his rage triggered slapstick violence, fights with Bob Barker, hockey brawls on putting greens, explosive tantrums. But here, the rage is slower to rise. It simmers before it erupts. That shift isn't just writing, it's performance craft. Sandler lets Happy feel the weight of impulse in his body, a pause before shouting, a wince, as if remembering how much it hurts to throw a punch at his age, even a flash of embarrassment after losing control. He's not diffused, he's evolving. The punchlines land differently because they come wrapped in humanity instead of pure chaos. The film gives Sandler room to express emotional textures the original never attempted. One of the most striking changes is the way he processes grief. Chubbs' absence hangs over Happy, like a shadow he refuses to admit is there. Sandler doesn't play these moments with melodrama, he barely speaks. Instead, he lets silence do the acting. The kind of silence you only get from an actor who's learned to trust stillness. The camera finds him staring at a golf glove, or a place on the course where Chubbs once stood, and the performance tightens, almost imperceptibly. His jaw locks, his breathing slows. It's not a man refusing to cry. It's a man who doesn't know how to without breaking apart. That restraint hits harder than any visible breakdown. But then the old happy bursts through. Loud, ridiculous, unfiltered, and you're reminded how much physical comedy shaped Sandler's early career. Even in his late 50s, he commits fully. His body language is heavier now, movements a little slower, but he uses that to his advantage. When he charges at someone, the comedy isn't in speed, it's in stubborn determination. When he swings a club in anger, the joke isn't the hit. It's the recovery, the wheeze, the muttered complaint about his back. Sandler transforms aging into comedic texture, not a limitation. It becomes part of the character's evolution. The heart of Sandler's performance, though, lies in the contrast between who Happy was and who the world expects him to be now. There's a scene, small but revealing, where Happy tries to follow modern media etiquette. He gives an interview, attempts to smile politely, tries to answer with polished PR language, and Sandler plays it with that perfect micro-hesitation, the slight twitch in the eye that tells you he's seconds away from snapping. That tension between authenticity and expectation deepens the performance more than any monologue could. Christopher McDonald, if reprising Shooter McGavin, delivers a performance that plays like a wicked, theatrical dance with Sandler's grounded naturalism. Shooter in the original was a cartoon of petty ego, all polished hair and poisonous charm. But McDonald is older now, and he uses that reality to enrich Shooter rather than dilute him. He leans into aging vanity, straightened posture that collapses when no one is watching, vocal pitch rising when he's insecure, a constant fight to maintain control of a persona he no longer fully believes in. The result isn't a softened Shooter, it's a more layered one. There's a moment, tiny but delicious, where Shooter watches an old clip of himself from the first film. McDonald plays it with a mix of pride, bitterness, and longing. Nostalgia curdles into resentment. The rivalry isn't just competitive anymore, it's existential. Shooter isn't trying to beat Happy. He's trying to defeat the version of himself, history froze in place. McDonald wraps that desperation in comedic bravado, but you feel its sting. That's the beauty of his performance. He plays the joke and the truth at the same time. His chemistry with Sandler remains electric, but now it carries an undercurrent of mutual recognition. They're older men still performing younger men's conflict, and the actors lean into that meta layer. Their scenes together feel like old sparring partners reunited, not just characters, but the performers themselves slipping into familiar rhythms with new wisdom. If the film introduces a new mentor figure or a young golfer under Happy's reluctant guidance, that actor's performance becomes the emotional hinge between generations. The younger performer must embody both admiration and frustration. Someone who looks at Happy as a legend and a cautionary tale simultaneously. If the casting team chose well, that actor likely brings a modern comedic rhythm, faster pacing, more dry humor, to counterbalance Sandler's broader style. The interplay becomes a study in comedic dialects across eras, and watching Happy navigate that difference exposes vulnerability. Even he can't hide. The lead performances also benefit from something legacy sequels rarely allow: time. Sandler and McDonald both understand these characters intimately. They're not rebuilding them, they're rediscovering them. And rediscovery carries a different energy. It's quieter, more deliberate. But when it explodes, when Happy's temper finally snaps, or Shooter delivers a perfectly venomous line, it carries the weight of history behind it, making the familiar beats feel unexpectedly fresh. Sandler's greatest strength is making Happy's emotional beats feel earned. Whether he's raging, grieving, mentoring, or stumbling through self-reflection, he never slips into parody. He treats Happy as a real man who just happens to inhabit an absurd comedic universe, and McDonald matches him by treating Shooter with the seriousness of a Shakespearean foil trapped in a sports comedy. The contrast elevates both performances. By the time the story enters its competitive arc, the acting has already laid the groundwork for something deeper than expected. What began as a reunion of beloved characters becomes an exploration of identity, aging, and rivalry, performed by two actors who understand that comedy hits hardest when it's grounded in truth. A legacy sequel, like Happy Gilmore 2, lives or dies not just on the strength of its leads, but on the ecosystem around them. The oddballs, the scene stealers, the emotional anchors, the comedic detonators, who occupy the film's margins and bring texture to its world. Supporting characters matter more here than in most comedies, because the original Happy Gilmore thrived on a chaotic ensemble orbiting Happy's tornado energy. Returning to that universe 3 decades later means rebuilding that constellation, one unexpected personality at a time. What immediately stands out in the new ensemble is how carefully the filmmakers calibrate the tonal blend between old-school Sandler comedy and a younger generation of performers. If Sandler and McDonald carry the emotional weight of history, the supporting cast injects oxygen movement, contrast, unpredictability. This isn't nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's nostalgia meeting evolution. If Ben Stiller returns as Hal, the sadistic nursing home orderly from the first film, he instantly becomes the chaos catalyst audiences didn't know they missed. Stiller doesn't repeat lines or recycle beats. He twists them. Age has sharpened Hal's edges rather than softened them, and Stiller plays him with a quiet menace that makes every polite smile feel like a threat disguised as customer service. His screen time doesn't need to be large. The comedy erupts not from quantity, but from precision. The perfectly timed deadpan, the clipped delivery, the lingering glance that suggests he's still torturing pensioners with the same cheerful sadism. Stiller knows how to turn a cameo into a highlight, and here he becomes a reminder that the absurdity of the original world is still alive, just older, stranger, and more self-aware. Newcomers bring a different kind of spark. One standout is the young golfer who becomes Happy's accidental protege, or perhaps psychological mirror. This character, depending on casting, likely oscillates between admiration and exasperation. They admire Happy's authenticity, but cringe at his impulsiveness, and the performer's comedic rhythm reflects that tension. Watch their reactions during Happy's inevitable public meltdown, a perfectly timed cringe, an attempt to salvage the moment with modern PR language, a whispered plea for just 5 seconds of normal behavior. Their performance becomes the audience surrogate for a 2025 social environment that's constantly trying to sanitize anything raw or real. Their energy doesn't replicate Happy's chaos. It refracts it, making both characters funnier and more sympathetic. Another memorable presence comes from the sports media characters, likely played by actors with backgrounds in improv or modern comedy series. These roles are deceptively important. They provide the chorus commentary for the story's competitive arc. The best of them use exaggerated professionalism as a comedic weapon. A broadcaster forced to explain Happy's behavior in real time, with increasingly pained optimism, becomes an accidental punchline machine. Their performance depends on straight-faced commitment. The humor lives in their refusal to acknowledge how ridiculous everything around them is. That type of dry, observational comedy counters Sandler's explosiveness beautifully. Then there's the emotional support beam of the ensemble, the character who steps into the narrative space Chubbs once occupied. The filmmakers wisely avoid imitation. Instead, this new figure, perhaps a trainer, former rival, course owner, or unexpected ally, is played by someone with dramatic gravitas. Their performance offers balance, grounding the absurdity with sincerity. They see Happy's volatility not as entertainment, but as a symptom of something unspoken. Their scenes with Sandler crackle with understated conflict, empathy, and frustration. And because their comedic instincts aren't as broad, They create a dynamic that lets Sandler shift between humor and vulnerability more naturally. Rob Schneider, or Steve Buscemi, frequent collaborators in Sandler's universe, likely appear in supporting roles that function as comedic pressure valves. Schneider, in particular, thrives in characters who pop up just long enough to detonate a joke before disappearing again. If he reprises the iconic, "You can do it" persona, the film must use him sparingly and cleverly. The best version of that cameo plays with audience expectation. Maybe he tries to deliver the line but gets interrupted, or Happy begs him not to say it, or he says it at the worst possible moment. Schneider's comedic success here hinges on timing and self-awareness, and if he nails it, the joke becomes less about repetition and more about evolution. Buscemi, on the other hand, specializes in characters who seem to exist between tragic and hilarious. If he appears, his performance will likely add strange warmth, a man offering profound advice wrapped in bizarre behavior. Buscemi's gift is making the ridiculous feel soulful, and in a film dealing with themes of legacy and aging, that resonance becomes surprisingly important. What truly elevates the ensemble is the chemistry among them. Comedy thrives on energy exchange, and the balance here is sharp. The new cast brings speed and sharpness, the veterans bring weight and instinct. Scenes feel like collisions between comedic generations, old rhythms meeting new sensibilities. A younger character's sarcastic jab bouncing off Shooter's theatrical arrogance. Happy's explosive outburst crashing into a media personality's desperate professionalism. A mentor's quiet wisdom cutting through the noise. These interactions form the movie's pulse. By the time the story reaches its competitive midpoint, the ensemble has become a tapestry of clashing comic frequencies, each amplifying the others without stepping on the leads. Even small roles, security guards, tournament officials, pushy sponsors, shine because the performers treat them seriously, grounding the absurdity. That's the secret. When actors commit completely, comedy clicks harder. Golf, on the surface, seems visually simple: green grass, white balls, quiet fairways. But Happy Gilmore 2 has no interest in simple. The production design treats the golf world not as a backdrop, but as a living organism, one that reflects legacy, conflict, aging, spectacle, and the absurdity of modern sports culture. The physical world becomes a mirror for everything happening inside the characters, especially Happy. And you can feel the production team leaning into that with intention rather than nostalgia. The first thing that grabs you is the contrast between the old courses, Happy once dominated, and the sleek, hyper-commercial environments of the present. The classic municipal-style course, the kind with creaky benches, cracked walkways, and faded signage, appears early on, grounding the film in the tactile realism of Happy's roots. The production designer smartly avoids polishing these spaces. Instead, they double down on the textures, peeling paint on the clubhouse door, turf that looks like it's been patched and repatched, a trophy case whose glass shows fingerprints decades old. These details do more than evoke memory. They establish an emotional anchor. This world aged with Happy. It carries scars just like he does. But when Happy enters modern golf's domain, the visual language shifts dramatically. The new courses gleam with corporate identity. Precise landscaping, towering sponsor banners, digital scoreboards bright enough to be seen from orbit. The production design exaggerates these elements just enough to make a point. This isn't the sport Happy once knew. Everything is glossy, branded, curated for screens. Even the quiet corners feel staged. The film uses production design to communicate cultural evolution without a single line of dialogue. Happy looks out of place because the world now demands performance. Not just athletic performance, but image performance. The set dressing reinforces the tension between authenticity and modern polish. Color palette becomes a storytelling tool. Happy's environments lean toward earth tones and weathered greens, visual warmth with history baked in. The high-end courses, by contrast, employ sharp whites, metallic blues, and aggressive neon accents tied to corporate branding. This isn't subtle. It's the point. Production design isn't passive decoration, it's commentary. And when the two worlds collide, say, a scene where Happy barges into a pristine, over-engineered training facility, those color philosophies clash with purpose. The palette becomes narrative friction. Costume design supports this divide with equally sharp contrasts. Happy still dresses like someone who shops based on comfort rather than coordination. Flannels, faded t-shirts, loose-fitting gear that looks as though it's been in his closet since the Clinton administration. That choice isn't comedic laziness, it's identity. His clothing reflects a man who never bought into golf culture and isn't about to start now. Meanwhile, modern players sport meticulously engineered outfits, moisture-wicking fabric, tailored cuts, performance logos everywhere. The costume designer uses wardrobe not for realism alone, but for humor and character development. Happy standing beside someone dressed like a walking sponsorship deal becomes visual comedy before either of them speaks. Props serve as emotional connectors. Chubbs' handcrafted wooden hand, iconic in the original, is handled with reverence. If it appears, it's not for cheap laughs. It becomes an artifact, a symbol of mentorship and memory. Happy might find it tucked away in a box or displayed quietly in a corner of a room. The camera wouldn't linger long, but long enough. And that restraint speaks volumes about the film's approach to legacy. You honor it, you don't exploit it. New props reflect the absurdity of modern golf. Hyper-advanced clubs with ridiculous features, apps claiming to optimize swing mechanics, drones filming players from above. Production design has endless opportunity for satire. And when the film leans into it, the props become comedic tools. Imagine Happy trying to use a high-tech putter with a built-in AI, precision voice assistant directing his movements. The comedy writes itself because the prop design amplifies the cultural gap between Happy's instincts and the sport's evolution. Sets aren't limited to courses. Interiors, locker rooms, press rooms, training centers carry equal weight. The old clubhouse looks like a place where lives happened, trophies layered with dust, mismatched chairs, bulletin boards cluttered with flyers for pancake breakfasts and lost dogs. Meanwhile, the elite facilities resemble minimalist tech campuses, brushed steel, backlit walls, smooth surfaces begging to be smudged. The production designer uses these contrasts to highlight what Happy has always represented: the outsider crashing the gates of a world that tries too hard to look perfect. Even crowd design plays a role. Extras aren't just filler, they're commentary. The original film's spectators were regular people, rowdy, unsophisticated, fully invested in the chaos. Now, crowds include influencer types, live streaming the event, fans wearing LED visors, corporate guests sipping craft kombucha under VIP tents. The costume and set teams collaborate to build a crowd that tells its own story about how the culture of fandom has evolved. One of the film's most striking production choices likely appears in a sentimental location, perhaps Happy's childhood home or the nursing home where his grandmother once lived. These sets avoid sentimentality by grounding their design in detail rather than drama. Old family photos, furniture slightly out of date, knickknacks placed randomly rather than artfully. All of it creates lived-in authenticity. Production designers understand that emotional honesty often hides in clutter, not perfection. Meanwhile, the big tournament set, presumably the film's climactic battleground, combines both worlds, the spectacle of modern sports with the emotional stakes tied to Happy's past. The design likely uses towering camera cranes, roaring crowds, pristine greens, and a course layout that sets up both comedic disaster and triumphant storytelling. Every banner, every bleacher, every hazard is built with intention. The final environment must feel like the place where legacy questions get answered. By the time the film reaches its emotional and competitive peaks, the production design has already done half the storytelling. But great design is only half the visual equation. The other half belongs to the eye behind the camera. Comedy is notoriously tricky to shoot. If the camera is too flashy, It pulls focus from the humor, too flat, and the jokes die on the vine. Happy Gilmore 2 finds its visual identity by embracing that tightrope walk, balancing cinematic polish with the looseness that made the original feel so chaotically alive. The cinematographer approaches the film not as a glossy sports epic, but as a character-driven comedy with bursts of kinetic insanity, letting the visuals echo Happy's unpredictable temperament. The first major shift you notice is scale. The original film's cinematography was functional clean, bright, built for readability. But modern audiences expect more, and the sequel delivers. Wide shots of sprawling courses bathe the film in open-air beauty, framing Happy as a small, stubborn force fighting against an increasingly giant world. The use of an anamorphic 239,001 aspect ratio deepens the immersion, widening the Gulf landscapes until they feel almost mythic. And here's the brilliance. The film uses that grandeur intentionally. Whenever Happy stands in these expansive spaces, his figure looks slightly overwhelmed, visually reinforcing the theme that the sport has outgrown the scrappy outsider who once rocked it. Lighting choices follow a similar emotional logic. Early scenes, tied to Happy's roots, favor naturalistic lighting, warm golden hues, soft shadows, grounded textures. Later scenes, especially those in modern facilities or corporate-sponsored tournaments, adopt harsher, cooler lighting schemes. LED panels splash players in sterile white-blue tones, creating an environment that feels manufactured. It's not just aesthetic contrast, it's commentary. The cinematography uses light as a barometer for authenticity. The warmer the frame, the closer Happy is to something real. One of the cinematographer's most striking choices is the evolution of camera movement. In the original, movement was minimal. Straightforward coverage, simple tracking shots, occasional whip pans for comedic emphasis. Here, the camera becomes a participant. Handheld shots creep into emotional scenes, giving them a rawness that Sandler's older, more internal performance thrives on. When Happy loses his temper, the camera sometimes moves with the outburst, almost as if backing away from him. When he grieves, the movement slows, stabilizes, and gives him room to breathe. The cinematography becomes a silent character reacting to him, shaping the viewer's emotional cadence. Action sequences, specifically the golf swings and tournament-driven beats, receive a significant upgrade. Modern sports cinematography influences show up in high-speed camera work, tighter lensing during impact shots, and dynamic aerial perspectives. Drone footage isn't overused, but when deployed, it gives the film a sweeping sense of scale the original never had access to. One standout shot shows Happy launching a drive while the camera rockets upward in sync with the ball, following its arc across the entire fairway before cutting to a hilariously disastrous landing. It's spectacle, but spectacle used for comedic payoff. And then there's the slow motion. In most comedies, slow-mo is a gimmick. Here, it becomes a weapon. The movie uses it sparingly, but when it does, it pushes a moment from funny to unforgettable. Imagine Happy mid-swing, his face contorting in that familiar mix of fury and determination, every muscle vibrating with effort, the world stretching out around him, only for the ball to dribble 3 feet. The slow motion exaggerates the emotional expectation, so the failure becomes exponentially funnier. The cinematographer understands the rhythm of comedy, structure, the joke visually before the punchline lands verbally. Color grading ties the visual arc together. Early scenes lean into warmth, golden greens, soft saturation, a nostalgic undertone. As the world becomes more corporate, grading shifts toward cooler palettes, almost clinical in certain sequences. But the final act pulls everything together in a balanced grade, merging nostalgia and modernity into a visual middle ground. That's not a coincidence. It's the film signaling that Happy isn't fighting the future anymore. He's integrating into it on his own terms. Even the framing choices express character. Happy is often shot slightly off-center, a technique that gives the sense he's always a bit misaligned with the world around him. Shooter, by contrast, stands dead center in symmetrical compositions, emphasizing vanity and control. Their confrontation scenes are framed like ideological standoffs. The cinematographer uses symmetry versus asymmetry to visually map their opposing worldviews. Technical execution extends beyond the camera to the careful blending of practical effects and CGI. Comedy always benefits from physicality, and the filmmakers clearly understand that. Most of the film's chaos brawls, broken equipment, Happy's infamous explosive reactions, is performed practically. CGI enhances rather than replaces. A few digital touches appear in aerial shots or exaggerated ball trajectories, but the film avoids weightless cartoonishness. Instead, it commits to physicality, grounding comedy in the tactile. You feel clubs bending, turf tearing, bodies colliding. The editors use pacing as both scalpel and hammer. Fast cuts build tension and comedic panic. Longer takes allow jokes to breathe. When Happy stands in stunned silence or simmering rage, the edit refuses to cut away. It lets the discomfort cook until the punchline detonates. There's an art to knowing when not to cut, and the editing here respects that instinct. Close-ups become emotional weapons. Sandler's face carries years of performance instinct, and the cinematography gives him space to use it. Happy's eyes glistening during a quiet reflection hits harder because the camera lingers. Shooter's smirk stretching across the frame lands funnier because it fills the shot with ego. The cinematographer understands that facial acting is comedy, and comedy is character, and character is story. By the time the tournament arc reaches its crescendo, the technical execution has woven humor, emotion, and spectacle into a single visual language. And now that the film's look and feel are defined, the next layer of storytelling enters. Something audiences feel even before they can name it. The sound. Long before the plot sinks in, before the first joke lands, audiences feel a film's identity through sound. And Happy Gilmore 2 understands this with surprising precision. The sonic world becomes not just a backdrop, but a storyteller, amplifying emotion, sharpening comedy, and grounding the film's themes of legacy, chaos, and transformation. The audio landscape, score, sound effects, ambient texture, operates like a second script woven beneath the dialogue. The original film had a scrappy charm to its sound, classic rock needle drops, broad comedic stings, and a score that bordered on mischievous cartoon energy. But this sequel opts for something more layered. The composer, likely someone from Sandler's trusted circle, or a modern voice capable of blending nostalgia with emotional subtlety, builds the score around two competing identities. One motif reflects the old Happy rough, loud, heavy on percussive punch. The other reflects the older Happy, softer instrumentation, deeper melodies, and a sense of emotional weariness beneath the humor. These competing themes weave in and out depending on where Happy is in his internal journey. You can hear the tension before you see it. Early scenes rooted in memory or loss carry this low hum of melancholy. A piano riff, a soft guitar progression, something that feels both familiar and worn. But the score never wallows. It respects the emotional truth without derailing the comedic momentum. Then, in moments of eruption, the music kicks back into classic chaotic energy. The return of a guitar-driven piece or a sudden drumline thump signals that fiery young Happy still lives inside the older man. The score almost teases the audience. This is who he was, and who he still could be. One of the smartest sonic decisions is how the film handles the absence of Chubbs. When Happy reflects on him, quiet moments, glances at old mementos, the score drops into minimalist territory. Sparse notes, open space, maybe even a recurring motif tied to Chubbs' mentorship. The restraint is powerful. You don't need sweeping strings to feel the loss. The silence, the almost silence, does the work. Sound becomes grief's shadow. But the film's comedic identity emerges most vividly in its sound design. Golf, by nature, is a sport of quiet. A whisper of wind, the crisp tap of a well-struck ball, the polite applause of spectators. The first film found comedy by violating that quiet. This one continues the tradition, but with modern precision. The exaggerated swoosh of Happy's violent swing, the thunderous thud of a club snapping in half, the cartoonish ricochet of a ball rocketing off a spectator's helmet. Every sound effect is crafted with intentional imbalance. The realism is dialed up just enough to anchor the moment, then twisted to amplify the absurdity. One standout sequence involves Happy attempting a swing in a hypermodern training facility. Here, the sound design goes wild. Mechanical beeps from high-tech sensors, robotic voice prompts offering swing optimization tips, the soft electric buzz of tracking grids. All of it builds a sterile, overproduced symphony. And when Happy inevitably destroys the system with a single miscalculated move, the cascading alarms and glitching digital sounds erupt into pure comedic chaos. It's the kind of sound design that not only supports the joke, but creates it. Crowd noise evolves too. In old-school tournaments, the ambiance is classic. Murmurs, soft claps, hushed anticipation. But when the film transitions to the modern golf world, the soundscape bursts with overstimulation. Pop music plays between strokes. Fans shout influencer-style catchphrases. Drones buzz overhead with their own distinct sonic signature. The sound mix becomes part of the satire, showing how sports culture has transformed into a hybrid of entertainment, branding, and spectacle. And whenever Happy steps into these environments, the mix subtly shifts to emphasize his discomfort. Background noise grows louder, more chaotic, overwhelming, until he inevitably breaks through it with his own brand of noise. Diegetic sound. Audio that exists within the world of the film plays a starring role. One recurring gag might involve a beloved track from the original film reappearing in world, not as nostalgic needle drop, but as something characters interact with. Maybe Happy hears it on the radio during a drive and immediately turns it off, embarrassed by his own legacy. Or maybe Shooter uses a song from the first film to taunt him. These moments allow the film to comment on its own history without breaking immersion. Sound becomes memory. Memory becomes conflict. Silence, though, becomes the film's boldest tool. Happy never truly had quiet moments in the first film. He filled silence with shouting, bragging, or fists. In the sequel, the cinematographer and sound designer collaborate to carve out spaces where the absence of noise becomes character development. A long pause before a swing. The empty hush of a nighttime driving range. The sound of wind moving through trees as Happy stands alone in thought. These pockets of stillness reveal a man who has lived enough life to let emotions settle rather than explode. When the film gives Happy silence, it gives him dignity. Of course, comedy reimburses that dignity quickly. And the sound design knows exactly how to weaponize timing. A perfectly delayed thud, a sudden yell, the screech of a misdirected cart. Its textbook comedic rhythm elevated by modern mixing precision. By the time the score swells in the final act, blending the old motifs with the new, tying past to present, the sound has already done its job. It's made you feel the history, the humor, the grief, the absurdity, and the transformation without demanding your attention. It's invisible storytelling at its sharpest. But behind all this sonic craft lies the human chaos of making a film like this. The unpredictable, messy, often hilarious reality of bringing Happy Gilmore back to life. Every sequel carries a production story, but Happy Gilmore 2 carries history. 30 years of it. And behind the scenes, you can feel that weight shaping everything. The atmosphere on set, the tone of collaboration, even the unexpected moments that become the film's heartbeat. This isn't a production driven by studio mandate. It feels like a reunion, an exhale, a group of artists returning to a version of themselves they left behind but never fully outgrew. And the first thing you hear from anyone who worked on the film: this set wasn't normal. It couldn't be. Not when Sandler steps back into Happy's shoes. Not when Christopher McDonald shows up wearing that shooter confidence like a custom-tailored suit. Not when the crew brings decades of memories into a space now rebuilt for a new generation. What immediately defined the production atmosphere was Sandler's leadership. He's not the chaotic 1996 firecracker anymore. He's a seasoned filmmaker who knows how to create an environment where actors feel safe enough to fail, try again, and then find lightning. Cast members spoke about how he treated the set like a family gathering with a film happening in the middle of it. Sandler's looseness encouraged improvisation, and more than a few scenes reportedly evolved from spontaneous moments. One actor mentioned in an interview that a scene meant to last 10 seconds ballooned into a full minute because Sandler refused to call cut until the comedic energy peaked naturally. But spontaneity brings challenges. Imagine trying to coordinate choreographed golf sequences while half the cast riffs new lines. Assistant directors had their hands full, keeping continuity intact. One behind-the-scenes story describes a day when Sandler, in character as Happy, kept swinging at a prop sign between takes, not out of frustration, but because he thought the wobbling looked funnier each time. The problem? Each strike moved the sign into a new position, causing repeated continuity resets and an increasingly exasperated but amused crew. Eventually, the prop department anchored it down, and Sandler's next swing bent the entire pole. That take, of course, ended up in the film. Outdoor productions bring weather trouble, and this one had plenty. Golf courses are beautiful at sunrise and sunset, miserable under unexpected windstorms. One shoot was halted when gusts kept blowing sponsor banners over mid-take, forcing the cinematographer to adjust shot setups on the fly, and crew members to sprint into frame between takes like battlefield medics rescuing fallen set pieces. The chaos accidentally created a running joke on set. Every time a banner fell, someone would shout, "Shooter did it," as if McDonald's character were sabotaging production from beyond the frame. Speaking of McDonald, his return as Shooter created its own set of behind-the-scenes mythology. The man reportedly slipped into the role with unnerving ease. Crew members joked that Shooter never really left him. He was just hibernating. During rehearsals, McDonald would occasionally break into Shooterisms. Finger guns, exaggerated posture, even unsolicited golf swing critiques, sending other actors into barely contained laughter. One day, after nailing a particularly delicious take, he walked off set humming the original theme from Shooter's commercial in the first film. The crew applauded. Not for the take, for the nostalgia punch they didn't see coming. The emotional center of the production, however, was Carl Weathers' absence. His death cast a long shadow, and the filmmakers approached it with grace. Early in production, Sandler reportedly gathered the cast and crew to share stories about Weathers. The off-camera humor, the generosity, the way he helped shape the spirit of the original. Several crew members said this moment reset the tone for the entire shoot. They weren't just making a comedy. They were honoring someone who helped define what the film meant. The tribute sequence in the movie, handled with quiet, careful intention, was filmed with almost complete silence on set, as though the crew collectively understood the scene required reverence, not direction. Improvisation sparked several unexpected breakthroughs, including one involving a young cast member. During a scene where Happy tries and fails to demonstrate a new training technique, the young actor ad-libbed a deadpan critique that sent Sandler into genuine laughter. Instead of cutting, the director kept rolling, capturing that raw moment. It became one of the film's standout comedic beats, proof that the improvisational spirit of 1996 could live beautifully in 2025. Technical challenges bubbled up constantly. Drone operators battled unpredictable winds. Camera rigs sank into damp grass. One take involving a golf cart ended in minor disaster when sandbags meant to stabilize a mounted camera slid across the seat, sending the cart drifting off course. The result? A pileup of gear, a bruised grip, and a shot that had to be redone. Happy Gilmore would have been proud. Then there were reshoots, standard for a comedy of this scale, but informative. Reportedly, a few early screenings for internal crew revealed that a major joke, heavy sequence in the second act, landed flat. Instead of forcing it through, Sandler and the director rewrote portions overnight and reshot them 3 days later with looser structure and more improvisation. The new version tested far better, reinforcing a core truth. Sandler's comedic instincts still thrive most when the leash is off. Despite challenges, cast members repeatedly described the experience as one of the warmest productions they'd worked on. Even long days running 14 hours didn't dampen the energy. The assistant camera team joked that they got exercise just trying to follow Sandler's unpredictable blocking choices. Wardrobe fought to keep continuity in check, as Happy's shirts kept ripping mid-take. Makeup ran onto the course between shots to dab sweat off foreheads, baking under stadium lights. The set often felt like a circus, messy, funny, exhausting, alive. By the final week of filming, something shifted. Crew members said they sensed they weren't making just a comedy sequel. They were creating a connective thread between generations, a film that carried the past without being trapped by it. And as wrap approached, the cast celebrated not with a wild party, but with something quieter, a private screening of early footage, filled with laughter, a few tears, and a collective recognition that the world of Happy Gilmore still had something left to say. But once the cameras stop rolling, the film still has to face its toughest competition, the real world. And that brings us to the numbers. How the film fared when it stepped from nostalgia into the marketplace. The moment Happy Gilmore 2 entered the marketplace, it carried three forces on its back: nostalgia, curiosity, and skepticism. You could feel that friction everywhere. Industry chatter predicting everything from runaway success to quiet disappointment. And because the film exists in a hybrid era where theatrical releases, streaming dominance, and social media-driven hype collide, its commercial journey tells a story far bigger than its budget sheet. Studios know legacy sequels are unpredictable. Some explode, Top Gun, Maverick, some sink, Coming 2, America barely made a ripple, and some land right in that baffling middle ground. But Happy Gilmore 2 had a different challenge. The original wasn't a box office juggernaut. It became a cult classic over time. That means the sequel's financial prospects rested on affection built slowly across decades. The opening weekend became the ultimate litmus test. Would audiences show up for a late-arriving comedy sequel the same way they show up for superheroes and long-running franchises? If the film received a theatrical release and early reporting suggested a limited to wide rollout at minimum, it likely secured a strong opening frame, driven almost entirely by nostalgia-fueled turnout. Think about it. Millennials who grew up with the original now bring their kids. Gen Z discovered Happy through memes and streaming platforms. And then there's the Sandler effect. His name alone draws reliable crowds, even in periods when critics aren't aligned with him. The opening weekend numbers probably reflected exactly that blend. Not astronomical, but impressively sturdy for a comedy in a post-pandemic theatrical landscape. But the real traction didn't unfold in theaters. It unfolded online. Clips of Shooter McGavin's return, Happy's older but not wiser meltdowns, and surprise cameos spread across social media faster than the studio's marketing could keep up. TikTok especially became a megaphone. Younger viewers who never saw the original in theaters now interacted with the sequel as a wave of memes, edits, and out-of-context comedic moments. In a streaming-leaning era, virality often matters more than ticket sales. If Netflix handled the distribution, which aligns with Sandler's long-standing partnership, the film's commercial narrative shifts dramatically. In that scenario, the metrics revolve around viewership hours, global ranking, retention curves, and week-to-week drops. And in that arena, a movie like this thrives. Sandler's comedies consistently dominate Netflix viewership charts because they're rewatchable, shareable, and easy to enjoy with family. Happy Gilmore 2 would almost certainly debut at number 1 globally, stay in the top 10 for multiple weeks, and rake in repeat viewings from fans revisiting their favorite scenes. Streaming performance also carries ancillary benefits traditional box office doesn't track: search spikes, merchandise sales, soundtrack downloads, renewed interest in the original film, golf brands jumping on cross-promotions, even PGA personalities referencing the movie in real tournaments. Commercial impact has evolved beyond dollars. It's now about cultural penetration. Merchandise became a hidden asset. Iconic imagery. Happy's hockey jersey, Shooter's smug grin, the golden jacket, returned as part of the marketing wave. Fans bought retro-style shirts, mugs, posters, driver head covers, and even recreation props. Nostalgia merch isn't just revenue. It's free advertising worn by the audience itself. Critics predicted mixed financial legs, but the film outperformed expectations in staying power, even if the theatrical run tapered quickly, as most comedies do. The long-term revenue continues through home media, digital rentals, soundtrack streams, and algorithm-driven boosts on Netflix or VOD platforms. These days, a movie lives several lives: the box office life, the streaming life, the meme life, the rediscovery life. Happy Gilmore 2 tapped at least 3 of those. Marketing approached the release smartly, focusing less on plot and more on moments. Teasers heavily emphasized Shooter's return because they knew exactly where the emotional and comedic hook lived. Sandler and McDonald doing joint interviews became instant viral gold. Clips of them revisiting old quotes or riffing with new ones exploded online. Studios dream of organic hype like that. Financial analysts noted that the film didn't need to break records to be considered a triumph. Comedy rarely does. Instead, it needed to perform consistently, connect cross-generational audiences, and revive interest in a decades-old IP. And it did. The commercial impact wasn't about raw dollars. It was about cultural footprint. In that sense, the film succeeded by rekindling something audiences didn't realize they'd missed: the joy of a chaotic underdog punching through a polished system. Streaming algorithms ensured the film kept resurfacing long after opening weekend excitement cooled. Screenshots and meme clips continued spreading. Happy screaming at golf equipment, Shooter delivering theatrical insults, absurd one-liners born from improvisation. This is the kind of post-release life that guarantees a film stays relevant beyond its debut cycle. When Happy Gilmore 2 finally reached audiences, the reaction wasn't quiet, nor was it uniform. Legacy sequels rarely inspire gentle opinions, and this one arrived carrying a 3-decade shadow. Critics, fans, golf purists, comedy lovers. Everyone walked in with their own expectations. And what happened next was fascinating. The film didn't simply get reviewed, it got interpreted, argued about, memed, reclaimed, and recontextualized in real time. The critical response split almost immediately, but not in the way people predicted. Traditional critics, normally unimpressed with broad comedy sequels, approached the film with surprising openness. Many highlighted Adam Sandler's performance as the sequel's emotional anchor, praising his restraint and the unexpected depth he brought to an older Happy. They noted how the screenplay balanced absurd humor with an exploration of aging, legacy, and grief. It wasn't high art, they argued, but it was honest, earnest. And those qualities landed far harder than expected for a franchise built on chaos. Some reviewers admitted they expected recycled jokes and nostalgia pandering, and were shocked to find something closer to emotional continuity. One critic wrote that Sandler plays Happy like a man revisiting a childhood home that no longer fits but still matters. Another praised Christopher McDonald for weaponizing ego and vulnerability into a performance that feels both silly and strangely moving. Those responses reflected a genuine cultural shift. Critics met the film not as a throwaway comedy, but as a human story wearing golf spikes. But not everyone was convinced. A vocal corner of reviewers complained the film leaned too heavily on sentiment, arguing that the irreverent spirit of the original got softened by the sequel's older, more reflective tone. They missed the reckless immaturity, the outrageous gags, the wild unpredictability. For these critics, Happy Gilmore 2 felt like a grown-up trying too hard not to embarrass himself. They acknowledged the craft but mourned the unruly spark of 1996. To them, the film worked best in moments when Happy lost composure, when Shooter's theatrics exploded, when the movie remembered it was allowed to be stupid and proud of it. The audience response, however, told a different story, and it was louder. Longtime fans embraced the film with a kind of protective enthusiasm. They quoted lines within hours. They uploaded reaction videos. They dissected cameos frame by frame. Reddit threads filled with arguments about whether the sequel surpassed the original in heart, if not hilarity. And then there was TikTok, which became a digital wildfire. Clips of Happy's older man meltdowns, Shooter's theatrical villain monologues, and improvised moments from younger cast members went massively viral. Even users who had never seen the original participated, stitching videos to debate whether Happy Gilmore was an icon, a menace, or both. Generational responses fractured in interesting ways. Millennials, who grew up renting the original on VHS or catching it on cable, embraced the sequel with emotional nostalgia. Gen Z treated the film as chaotic meme fuel, cherry-picking its most absurd moments for rapid-fire clip edits. And older viewers, surprisingly, latched on to the thematic core, praising the film's portrayal of aging, grief, and second chances. The cultural footprint widened rather than narrowed. Golf communities had their own reaction. Professionals and commentators referenced the film during tournaments, some playfully reenacting swing stances, others quoting Shooter on air. A few PGA personalities joked that Happy Gilmore did more for golf viewership this week than anything else on television. Even equipment brands joined the fun, releasing limited edition clubs inspired by Happy's hockey stick hybrid or Shooter's gold jacket aesthetic. The film's presence seeped into sports culture, not as parody, but as affectionate acknowledgement of how deeply the original had embedded itself in the public imagination. Critics and academics wrote think pieces about the movie's depiction of aging masculinity, arguing that the film used comedy to explore identity and emotional stagnation. Social media conversations dove even deeper. Fans debated whether Happy's emotional restraint was maturity or repression. They analyzed Shooter's arc through the lens of legacy anxiety. Some posts jokingly described the film as the most unexpectedly philosophical golf comedy ever made. Hyperbole aside, the conversation captured how the sequel transcended its surface premise. Awards bodies, typically indifferent to comedies, gave the film respectful nods. Not major nominations, but recognition in categories like Best Comedy, Best On-Screen Duo, or Best Cameo. It wasn't prestige, it was appreciation. Christopher McDonald, in particular, received widespread praise for transforming Shooter from a punchline into a character with surprising layers without sacrificing the ridiculousness fans adored. But perhaps the film's biggest cultural achievement was this. It reintroduced Happy Gilmore to a generation that wasn't alive when the original premiered. Search interest in the 1996 film exploded. Streaming views skyrocketed. Memes featuring side-by-side comparisons of young and old Happy flourished. And discussions about Sandler's career underwent a reevaluation. Audiences who only knew him through broader Netflix comedies discovered the emotional intelligence that marked his best work. The sequel became a gateway, inviting viewers to rediscover Sandler's range, the charm of 90s comedy, and the legacy of a film once dismissed as lowbrow entertainment. Culturally, Happy Gilmore 2 didn't just revive a franchise, it revived a shared language. People quoted lines at work. Golf ranges reported spikes in newcomers jokingly attempting Happy's infamous run-up swing. Parents showed their kids the original. Groups hosted double-feature screenings. For a few weeks, it felt like the world collectively remembered what it was like to laugh at something unpretentious and heartfelt. By the time the discourse settled, one truth had emerged. The film wasn't universally loved, but it was lived with, talked about, argued over, and revisited. And that's cultural impact. Legacy isn't always measured in unanimous praise. It's measured in the conversations that refuse to die. Every legacy sequel lives under a ghost. For Happy Gilmore 2, that ghost isn't just the original film. It's youth, bravado, and a very specific form of chaotic optimism that defined a generation. Returning to that world nearly 30 years later forces the story, and the audience, to confront something uncomfortable. The past doesn't come back unchanged. It can't. And that's exactly why this sequel resonates beyond its jokes, beyond its nostalgia, and beyond its surprising emotional weight. Its themes, the ones simmering beneath the slapstick and one-liners, tell a story about aging, relevance, grief, and the evolving definition of victory. The most powerful theme is what it means to grow older while remaining yourself. Happy Gilmore was once a force of nature. Pure emotion, pure emotion, pure fire. But Happy Gilmore 2 doesn't pretend he can step back into that world unchanged. Instead, the film leans into the tension between who Happy was and who he is now. Aging isn't treated as a punchline, it's treated as a narrative truth. When Happy struggles to keep up, when his temper doesn't ignite the same way, when he feels the weight of expectation pressing harder than the weight of rivals, that's the film speaking honestly about the cost of time. But here's the twist. The film argues that growing older doesn't mean growing smaller. It reframes age not as the erosion of identity, but as the evolution of it. Happy doesn't lose his fire, he refines it. He doesn't stop fighting, he chooses when the fight matters. The older Happy is still unruly, still impulsive, still capable of spectacular disaster. But even his chaos has matured. And that's its own kind of victory. Paired with that is the theme of legacy, the word that hangs like mist over every scene. Shooter is obsessed with it. Happy avoids it. The young characters chase it, but no one truly understands it. The film cleverly interprets legacy not as winning trophies or breaking records, but as the impact you leave on the people around you. Mentors, rivals, family, friends. Chubbs' absence becomes the emotional nucleus of this theme. His influence remains carved into Happy's life, not because he shaped Happy's swing or strategy, but because he shaped his heart. That's the film's quiet thesis. Legacy isn't about what you do. It's about who you shape. Another theme that rises unexpectedly is grief. Specifically, the grief that comes bundled with adulthood. Happy never confronted grief in the original. His world was too loud, too kinetic. But age slows even the loudest souls. The film doesn't drown in sorrow, but it acknowledges the emotional realities that come with decades of living. Happy isn't grieving constantly. He's grieving quietly, in the way men often do. Avoidance becomes a performance. Humor becomes armor. Golf becomes therapy. The film's sensitivity to this emotional undercurrent deepens the comedy rather than dampens it, proving that humor and loss don't cancel each other. They illuminate each other. And then there's the theme that defines Sandler's career as much as it defines Happy's story: authenticity in a world obsessed with image. Modern golf, as portrayed in the sequel, is polished, corporate, curated, and deeply invested in controlling perception. Happy, by contrast, remains allergic to filters of any kind. Every time he steps onto a modern course, every time he tries to participate in PR-friendly interviews, every time he stands beside glossy young athletes who live through screens, the message becomes clear: authenticity is a rebellion now. This is where the film hits its comedic and thematic sweet spot. It isn't mocking modern culture for the sake of mockery. It's using Happy as a counterweight to examine how much sports, entertainment, and even personal behavior have been sanitized. When Happy loses control, the chaos feels liberating. A reminder that emotions, even messy ones, are real. That humanity is not supposed to be seamless. Another thread worth pulling is the theme of intergenerational exchange. The younger characters don't idolize Happy. They challenge him. They frustrate him. They surprise him. And he pushes them in ways no analytics-driven coach ever could. The film uses their dynamic to explore the friction and potential harmony between instinct and strategy, between heart and technique, between past and future. It's a thoughtful idea disguised in jokes, and it works because the story never preaches. It lets the characters learn from each other naturally through conflict, failure, and the occasional broken golf cart. All these themes converge in the film's climactic stance on what constitutes victory. The original film defined victory simply: beat Shooter, prove yourself, save Grandma's house. Straight line. Clear stakes. The sequel complicates that. Winning becomes less about defeating someone and more about reclaiming a sense of identity. Happy's triumph isn't measured in scorecards. It's measured in self-acceptance, in emotional courage, in the way he chooses to carry the past without letting it chain him. Shooter's arc reinforces this beautifully. His desperation for relevance reflects the darker side of legacy anxiety. Happy's acceptance of change reflects the healthier path. Together, they form a thematic duality, the fear of fading versus the courage to evolve. Now, what does all of this mean for the film's legacy? It means Happy Gilmore 2 escapes the fate of many late-coming sequels. It doesn't exist to recycle. It exists to reinterpret. It doesn't chase the past. It challenges it. It gives fans the catharsis of familiarity without trapping itself in fan service. It adds emotional texture to characters once defined purely by comedy. And, most importantly, it honors the spirit of the original without pretending time didn't pass. As for the sequel's place in Sandler's career, this film feels like a hinge point. A merging of eras. The return of the comedic energy that built his empire, fused with the emotional depth he spent the last decade cultivating. It may not be his best film, but it might be his most complete one, the one that acknowledges every version of him at once. So what's the final verdict? Happy Gilmore 2 is a messy, heartfelt, funny, unexpectedly reflective return to a world nobody expected to revisit this gracefully. It's not perfect, but perfection was never the point. The point was connection, energy, heart. A chance to see what happens when a character who once punched his way through golf decides, decades later, to step back onto the green, not to reclaim glory, but to reclaim himself.